They called it a community project. I called it trespassing. They built a pier on my land on soil my wife and I worked for, lived on, buried our dog under, and when the storm came, the river took it back. Every single plank. It started with orange flags, tiny triangles flapping in the wind, lined up across my pasture like a row of insults. At first, I figured it was a county utility check. Happens every few years out here. But when I saw the logo on the truck, Sunset Waters HOA, my stomach dropped. I'd lived here 17 years, retired from the Corps of Engineers. My wife and I bought this stretch of riverbank for peace and quiet, not for committees and bylaws. She passed 5 years ago, but I kept the place exactly how she left it. I knew every inch of this soil, and none of it belonged to the HOA. Then she stepped out of the truck, platinum bob oversized sunglasses and heels sinking into my grass. She waved like we were old friends. "Hi there, you must be Mr. Maddox." I didn't answer. She held up a glossy folder, smiling that corporate smile that doesn't reach the eyes. "We're just marking the boundaries for a new community enhancement project." "What project?" I asked. She opened the folder, showing me a picture straight out of a real estate brochure, families, fishing couples holding hands all on a pier stretching over the river. "The Sunset Waters Community Riverwalk," she said proudly. I looked her dead in the eye. "That's my land." Her smile didn't twitch. "According to our updated plat, this section falls under HOA jurisdiction. It was extended in 2011. "There was no extension," I said, "and this parcel's been mine since '06. I've got the deed." She shrugged, voice sugary sweet. "I'll pass your concerns to the board, but we're on a timeline. Don't want to delay the project." Then she turned her back and told her crew to keep staking flags. I stood there watching strangers hammer metal into my wife's dream, my home, and realized something HOAs don't ask. They take and make you prove they're wrong. That night I pulled every file I had, deed surveys, topo maps, and confirmed what I already knew. They had no claim. I emailed the board, dropped hard copies at their office, even checked the city for permits. Nothing filed. But 3 days later, I came home to tire tracks and lumber stacked by the river. She hadn't waited. She'd started building. I stormed down the hill, yelling over the hum of a concrete mixer. 2 workers froze mid-swing, then pointed toward the HOA truck. Karen, because of course her name was Karen, sat behind the wheel, legs crossed like she was at brunch. "Good morning, Mr. Maddox," she called. "You're pouring concrete on my land," I shouted. She finally stepped out, smoothing her blazer. "Actually, our legal committee determined this area falls under the common use easement." "There is no easement. This is criminal trespass." "I think you're overreacting," she said. "It's a community asset, a place where neighbors can gather. No one's trying to take anything from you." "You're literally taking my land," I snapped, waving my deed. She just smiled, that cold, rehearsed smile. "Until our review concludes, construction will continue as scheduled." I blocked the workers. She threatened me with Section 14C of the Community Cooperation Guidelines. I laughed. "That's not a law. It's enforceable under our bylaws." The workers hesitated. I told them if they dropped one more bag of concrete, I'd call the sheriff. Karen turned on her heel, muttering, "See you in court." I should have stopped them then, but part of me, some naive part, still believed in reason. That maybe once the paperwork came through, they'd see the truth. But Karen didn't believe in reason. She believed in control. Next morning, the HOA's website had full blueprints, cost estimates, and an opening date for their pier. Not one mention of private property, just buzzwords: beautification, shared access, community spirit. I realized she wasn't after a pier, she was after power. I called zoning, no permits. Called the sheriff, he shrugged. Said it was a civil matter. I felt invisible, powerless. That night I sat by the window with the old photo of my wife fishing by that same bank, the sunset catching her hair. For a moment I wondered if I was crazy, if maybe I was overreacting. It's just land right. But then I remembered what she told me when we first bought it. The river's alive. Jack, respect it, and it'll protect you. So I did what I knew best. I documented everything. Photos, videos, timestamps, even soil samples. I sent them to every agency I could think of: City Hall, the County Flood Office, FEMA, the local news. Nobody answered. And still they built. I tried talking sense to Karen again. Met her by the river with my FEMA floodplain map. I pointed to the thick red line. This area's high risk. You're 3 feet inside it. She scoffed. We've commissioned our own survey. Unless FEMA changed the river overnight, your survey's worthless, I said. That soil won't hold a pier, not this time of year. She smirked. You're not an engineer, are you? I stared at her. Retired Corps of Engineers, 15 years in flood mitigation. I've seen what happens when people ignore hydrology. That shut her up for half a second, but arrogance runs deep. Well, this isn't a dam, Mr. Maddox. It's a community pier. No, I said. It's a lawsuit waiting to happen. Then the rain came. At first, it was just drizzle. Then it became sheets of water hammering the fields. The river swelled, crawling up the banks. And still, they didn't stop. Trucks kept coming, crews still hammering Karen in her pink windbreaker, directing like a movie star. By the second day, I was knee-deep in mud, yelling over the wind that this was suicide. She waved at me from her SUV like I was a crazy old man. The next morning, I saw the flyer taped at the clubhouse. Grand opening, April 18th. Food trucks, live jazz, family fun. They were actually going to throw a party on that death trap. That night, I emailed everyone again. Same thread, same evidence, but the subject line read, Urgent. Unsafe structure in floodplain. Immediate risk to public. No one replied. By then, the river was roaring. The air itself vibrated. My neighbor Terry showed up, raincoat flapping, binoculars in hand. You were right, he said, pointing at the far bank where chunks of mud were already slipping away. They're still holding that event, I said. He looked horrified. What do we do? We wait, I told him. The river's already doing the hard part. April 18th. Gray sky, swollen clouds. The air felt thick enough to chew. Trucks rolled in by morning vendors, musicians, people smiling like this was a summer fair. Karen arrived in a white Audi scarf, blowing lipstick perfect. She grabbed a mic under the HOA tent and started thanking everyone for believing in community vision. I watched from my porch folding chair under me, thermos in hand. The river was 4 inches from the pier's base. A family walked out onto it, 2 kids laughing, planks swaying under their feet. My stomach turned. I knew that movement. I'd seen it in collapsing levees. Then came the sound. A low groan, deep and wrong. The wind shifted hard from the side. The current surged. Crack. The first support beam twisted. Another snap, louder this time. Screams. People ran. A lantern pole broke loose, whipping through the air. Karen froze at the entrance of the pier, still clutching her ribbon-cutting scissors. Another section dropped, boards vanishing beneath the brown, boiling water. The river didn't explode. It pulled. Slow and sure, like it had been waiting for permission. Within minutes, the whole structure was gone, splinters and lanterns floating downstream like the aftermath of arrogance. By the time first responders arrived, it was over. Karen stood in the mud, mascara streaking, staring across at me. For the first time, she looked small. That night, the sheriff called. Same young deputy. Mr. Maddox, HOA President Mates, filed a report. She claims you may have contributed to the collapse. You mean sabotage, I said. She said negligence. But yeah, you've seen the evidence I sent. I have, he said quietly. Doesn't mean we can ignore a complaint. I sighed. I'll come in. He hesitated. For what it's worth, I told her she was playing with fire. Thing about fire, I said, it always leaves smoke. The next morning, I walked into the station with a binder full of proof emails, timestamps, FEMA maps. Even a letter from the state flood office confirming the HOA broke 2 state laws by building in a restricted zone. The deputy flipped through every page. When he looked up, his face had changed. She knew, he said. She laughed when I showed her the map. I replied. That afternoon, my attorney Valerie Briggs filed our countersuit trespass, property damage, defamation, and retaliatory legal action. She didn't waste time. We're not just defending, she told me. We're setting precedent. Court day came. Karen sat stiff as marble between 2 high-priced lawyers. Valerie laid out everything. Deeds, flood maps, photos, videos. Karen's. Smiling on that half-built pier while the water rose behind her. When the judge asked, "Did you receive these warnings?" Karen said, Yes, but. He cut her off. No buts. You ignored them. The ruling was swift full restitution legal costs and a permanent order barring the HOA from developing within 30 feet of my property. And for Karen personally, a cease and desist for abuse of authority. As the gavel fell, I didn't cheer. I didn't even smile. I just felt still, like the current had finally settled after a long, brutal storm. Outside, reporters swarmed. I told them one thing: you don't build beauty by stealing it. Later that evening, I sat by the river where the pier once stood. Grass was already growing through the mud. The water moved slow, calm, as if satisfied. Karen lost her seat on the board 2 weeks later. The HOA collapsed under fines and shame. But the river stayed. The river always stays. And that's the thing about nature, it doesn't need a lawyer to deliver justice.